Okay, hello everybody. It's my great honor to be here to talk to you about the future of work and immersion. So this is a big part of my professional experience at VEDX Solutions, where I've been working with this startup for some time now. So let's begin. So I'm here to talk to you about relationships within virtual contexts, like whether it be for education or training or just finding a way to connect to colleagues. You are building relationships within that space, and you have to make sure that that space carries the same meaning and a mutually beneficial meeting for all of the participants. So the promise of VR is that it can bring you into new experiences and as nearly as possible relive those experiences, which is why you've seen a lot of highly publicized space exploration apps, like apps that take you to different events in history, whether it's to the sinking of the Titanic or like specific battles in World War II. They're helping us come to a place that we wouldn't otherwise be able to see or visit. We could only imagine them previously. But when it comes to practical applications for these experiences, we have found many so far because people are very energized by this new technology and want to leverage the immersion that it gives in order to do something practical. So whether it is specific types of training, there are a lot of workplace training apps. There are ways of like practicing language and speaking. You can like prototype different experiences. If you work in design, you can, for example, if you're an architect, you can like make a prototype of a building and also bring people into that space with these multi-user apps. And there are other less intuitive uses, like you see in the top left corner, an app called Body Swaps, which is a partner of VEDX, and they are a soft skills solution for having you see the world from another person's position, like so you can communicate more understandingly. So there are many practical applications in the world, but we do have to keep the person in mind, regardless of what we're doing, because people may not always be completely comfortable with those virtual environments. So we have to be considerate in our approach. So finally, there are synchronous and asynchronous experiences, meaning you can quite easily record a 360 video and put somebody into that video. Where they can just be a witness to what is happening, like as an observer, and of course they can reflect on that experience, but it is quite passive. But there are synchronous experiences where you are able to meet with other people, whether it is a specific trainer, a coworker in a meeting, or a teacher if you're a student. And there are plenty of services out there that provide that. Like one such service is Engage, who is another one of our partners, as they do focus on educational environments. So given all of these types of experiences and the variety of purposes, let's ask ourselves what the different pieces or components of these virtual experiences are and what potentials do they give us individually. So we're going to look at four main categories, and the first one is the environment itself. So if we're in a virtual space, of course, that environment could look like a boardroom, a typical classroom, but it could be something wildly different, like something that completely comes from the imagination. You could be recreating a space station, as we saw before, and it's all directed at the outcomes that you want from the experience. So it might be beneficial if you are part of a company to make a space that brings you towards productivity. But if you want to like capture the imagination of children by bringing them to the prehistoric past where they can encounter dinosaurs, then yeah, you should have those dinosaurs there, of course. But beyond just the environment, you have interactability as well, and you need to decide what kind of tools to bring into that space so that they can feel that they have an effect within that virtual environment. Like whether it's post-it notes or whiteboards or specific tools that you would like them to learn so they get the most out of their experience. So after the environment, we have the content of a lesson itself. That's the subject, the medium, and also productivity. So when I'm referring to subject, I mean what information is actually being relayed, like whether it's a literature class in school or like helping people better understand the marketplace or supply chains or whatever you can think of. So since virtual reality and thereby the metaverse is still relatively new and still developing, like we are seeing firsthand this bottom-up approach where like if we want a specific experience like inside virtual spaces, those need to be built by developers, but we see year after year more tools coming up so that people can more easily build to fit their own needs to the point where like anything becomes possible. So having these virtual spaces also gives you a new medium in which to interact if you don't want to continue using computers, and you can also be productive there as well. So next, we should talk about the cohabitance of virtual spaces. So by cohabitance, I mean the people who are around you. In a professional setting, it may be colleagues, but in a networking event, it could be like people from around the world with a variety of backgrounds, and some people who you might be very fortunate to meet because you find opportunities together. But in more public environments, it does bring up a higher degree of risk for unwanted interactions. So there are some controls built into these virtual spaces in like how much you see, hear, interact with other people. And also if someone is especially troublesome, you can make them disappear. So of course, this is a kind of power that exists in virtual spaces that you don't always find in the real world. Like you can't effectively mute somebody in the real world. So this is, again, a kind of power you have to negotiate as users. And then lastly, we have bodily integrity, because when you are in a space like Engage, you are actually forfeiting control over your physical position in the world because the administrator or teacher can move you to where they see fit. And of course, strictly speaking, this does not happen in the material world, the real world. So this kind of power also needs to be negotiated so that people don't feel uncomfortable with the whole situation. So there is a big difference between what happens on a desktop computer and in VR, because there is a type of freedom that gets lost when you are in a virtual experience within VR, because you no longer have the option of not paying attention to what's happening. Whereas in a conference call, as most of you probably know, there are these lulls in the conversation where you can discreetly disappear to answer emails or check Twitter. But within VR, you don't have that much freedom. So, I mean, there are probably people who might want to take that freedom away from you so that you pay more attention to what's happening in a meeting. But that is very heavy-handed. So you may not want to be that strict and just allow people to wander off and check emails when they feel it's a better use of their time. So for the administrator of virtual spaces who's considering the content, the environment, how people interact amongst each other, and how much control they have over their own virtual body, there is a lot to consider. Like you have control over someone else's senses. You control whether or not someone else is able to speak, their physical position, which I described, how they interact with their environment, and how much they can do that. Also, the content of an experience, so what they're seeing and hearing, and also how much they pay attention. So with all of that in mind, you have to think, like, what makes the relationship between an administrator or teacher or like a meeting manager, like how does that relationship work with the people who are requested to be there? And what makes that relationship work is trust. So trust, of course, meaning if I am organizing a virtual meeting, I do the necessary preparation to make it a productive and fulfilling meeting for everybody there, and people finish the experience like not feeling uncomfortable with what happened, but instead having felt like it was worth their time in the end. So trust in these contexts means the following things. It means knowing about and planning for technical challenges for your software and hardware. So checklists are always helpful. Make a list of things that need to happen to make sure, for example, a VR headset is working and the meeting will go smoothly. Like you can't foolproof this 100% of the time, but at least make a checklist, show that you're prepared in case something goes wrong. And of course, in the end, you can abandon it for another medium, such as a call, if needed. In synchronous activities, give a verbal warning before you enact moderation tools. So if you're going to mute a class, tell them you're going to mute them. If you are going to move them to a place, tell them you're going to do that. Okay, so don't just do these things lightly, because people start to become annoyed with that behavior. So be aware of and plan for the comfort of your participants. So make sure everybody feels okay. Especially in VR, you might have people who are sensitive to movement. So make sure you don't do anything that tests them or makes them feel uncomfortable. Use content that adds to the value of an experience, and be transparent about the intended outcomes. So talk about what you're trying to do with people and why it might be beneficial and what you expect them to get out of it. And finally, talk to people afterwards about the experience. Of course, you don't want to force people to continue with experiences that they might not find valuable. So don't be pushy. Just talk about how the experience is and how it can be better. Okay, and that brings me to the end of my short talk. I do appreciate you listening. And if you want to learn about me or the company I represent, the information is on the screen. And I would look forward to your message and chatting.